Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. We're going to talk about J.K. Rowling again because she's in the news again, because she's upset the apple cart again, or rather, the New York Times has upset the apple cart by defending her, or rather running an op-ed piece that defends J.K. Rowling, because you're not allowed to do that current year. You're not allowed to agree with her in any fashion. Current year, she has to be blacklisted except by Universal, except by Warner Brothers, except by all these companies making money off of her IP. We're going to talk about this. Everybody weighing in on it. We've got some hot takes here. The Independent. We've got the Mary Sue. The New York Times knew what it was doing with this defense of J.K. Rowling. We've got Fox News's take, which is, significantly different than the other headlines. And that is like the least flattering picture of her ever. After New York Times column defends J.K. Rowling, angry liberals denounce monster, insist people are dying. That is definitely a Fox News headline. Even The Onion is kind of weighing in on it. It is journalism's sacred duty to endanger the lives of as many trans people as possible. So we'll talk about all of this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Over 294, almost 300,000 subs. Please subscribe. Trying to get to 300,000. Geeky will give you the biggest woohoo ever. She's not here right now. She's actually working on some other stuff. So you're stuck with me and all of my cis male privileged hot takes. Actually, I don't really have much of a hot take on this. She said what she said. Some people agree, some people don't agree. She's not canceled. People are trying very hard to get her canceled. And you don't have to agree with her, but the death threats and all that stuff, they're supposedly happening, and the lies on Twitter, and she's threatening to sue people now. And apparently the New York Times ran an op-ed piece that pissed people off, because we have to talk about it because of Hogwarts Legacy. And it did not go the way that people thought it was going to go. They thought that there was going to be this massive boycott of Hogwarts Legacy. And it turned out that, broadly speaking, a lot of the general public actually agrees with J.K. Rowling. Whoopsie doopsie, that didn't work out the way that people were hoping it would. And unfortunately, a lot of the attempts by activists to cancel Rowling, or anyone who's even half agrees with her, are backfiring tremendously. And it's actually hurting, I believe, again, my cis white male opinion, I believe it's actually hurting people's causes, because now it makes it easier to dismiss legitimate concerns that people might have about trans rights or whatever, because people are going to look at how streamers were treated during Hogwarts Legacy, how the media tried to black it out, how the BBC actually had to apologize for the editor of The Gamer coming on there and making up lies about J.K. Rowling. Same with her suing some people that wished her harm and said she was a literal Nazi. I mean, it's gotten pretty crazy, right? But she's still not canceled. Warner Brothers is doubling down on her. Hogwarts Legacy is breaking all kinds of records, streaming records, sales records, and Universal is still paying her. And we're going to do another video talking about that. But let's talk about this. So this is coming from The Independent, how the New York Times was rocked by the J.K. Rowling trans row. It came after staff raised serious concerns about editorial bias in its coverage. Remember when the New York Times was supposed to be like this activist rag or something, and now all of a sudden it's like the alt-right? An editorial in the New York Times defending the views of J.K. Rowling has reignited an incendiary war of words between the newspaper and its own staff over its coverage of trans and gender issues. It's an op-ed piece. It was clearly marked as such. Staff and contributors penned a letter this week criticizing the publication's coverage of trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people, a topic that has been causing bitter division on both sides of the Atlantic. The letter, addressed to the Times Associate Managing Editor for Standards, says the signatories had serious concerns about what they described as an editorial bias in the coverage. At the same time, more than 100 organizations issued a separate statement accusing the Times of spreading inaccurate and harmful misinformation about trans people and issues. Remember when everybody just hated Twitter because of Elon Musk? They've moved on to the next thing. Now it's time to hate the Times. And the Times was definitely, I guess, an activist rag. I mean, Barry Weiss, didn't she come from the Times? And she said that the Times, which used to be one of the most reputable newspapers in the world, had been infiltrated by activists. And I think we can kind of see this now, right? There were campaigners also staging a protest outside the publication's headquarters in Manhattan. The paper hit back, saying it was proud of its coverage, which it said it seeks to explore, interrogate, and reflect the experiences, ideas, and debates in society, and to help readers understand them. Just because you write about somebody's or give a platform to somebody and they can espouse their opinions does not necessarily mean you're signing off on those opinions. It used to be that news would be just that. They would put out the facts, they would put out, multiple arguments, opinion pieces, whatever, and the public was trusted to be smart enough to decide whether or not they agreed. And that is not the case now. Everybody has to be spoon-fed the correct opinion. Apparently determined not to be as strong-armed into changing what it felt was an objective reporting, or what it was objectively reporting on trans issues, the paper published an op-ed entitled "In Defense of J.K. Rowling." The Harry Potter author has faced a sustained backlash in recent years for statements she's made. We've talked about that at length. Pamela Paul, the author of the op-ed, said the campaign against the author, who has received abuse, including death threats, was as dangerous as it is absurd. Ms. Paul defended Rowling's right to debate, among other things, spaces for biological women, such as domestic abuse shelters and sex-segregated prisons, and the insufficiency of self-declared gender identity. She listed a series of Ms. Rowling's comments on trans issues, including one instance where she said, "I respect every trans person's right to live any way that feels authentic and comfortable to them." The brutal stabbing of Salman Rushdie last summer is a forceful reminder of what can happen when writers are demonized. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like, people put out opinions. You don't have to agree with their opinions. I don't think J.K. Rowling was literally calling for harm on anyone. Again, you do not have to agree with her. You don't have to agree with her. I personally think that she should have put Twitter down like years ago and been like, yeah, you know what? That's enough social media for me. I think I'm done here. But she has a right to express her opinions. She does, and these companies have a right to work with her. Lots of companies still working with her. She is absolutely positively not canceled. And that's what the issue is. The issue is she was supposed to go crawl into a hole and die. That was because you don't agree with her. That's the issue. She's supposed to be more canceled than Johnny Depp. That was the issue. And when that didn't happen, when she actually has, because of activism, this is my personal opinion, because of activists having such a meltdown over J.K. Rowling, she actually has more power now. Hogwarts Legacy sold much better than it would have had there not been outrage. There will be more interest in whatever new Harry Potter project is announced for HBO Max or Warner Brothers going forward because of all the outrage. People are going to support her who normally wouldn't have support her. It's so surreal because 20-some years ago, it was the Christian right, fundamentalists on the right. I'm not talking everybody, but some, who thought that Harry Potter was like literally the devil, and now it's on the left. It's really weird to see this. It really is, because I've lived long enough to see both sides here. So anyway, Times editor Joe Kahn had reprimanded staff for the letter, according to an internal email that was obtained by the New York Post. He said employees had gone against the letter in spirit of our ethics policy by aligning themselves with advocacy groups and attacking their colleagues' journalism. Well, they apparently drove Barry Weiss out of the Times. That's my understanding, and she's going to actually be interviewing J.K. Rowling. It's not unusual for outside groups to critique our coverage or to rally supporters to seek influence on our journalism, he said. In this case, however, members of our staff and contributors to the Times joined the effort. Their protest letter included direct attacks on several of our colleagues, singling them out by name. We do not welcome and will not tolerate participation by Times journalists in protests organized by advocacy groups or attacks on colleagues on social media and other public forums. Well, why not? Because it's been going on for years in all industries. Like every media industry, digital media, print media, legacy media, comic books, animation. It has, for some reason, become perfectly acceptable to call out your peers, demonize your peers, keep lists of peers you disagree with and keep them out of your industry, because you need to have a safe space where you're not challenged at all. Spokesman also pushed back against the criticism, saying our journalism strives to explore, interrogate, and reflect the experiences, ideas, and debates in society to help readers understand them. Our reporting did exactly that, and we're proud of it. So a lot of people, Lena Dunham, signed the note. Of course she did. Of course she did. And then they go through and they basically try to destroy the New York Times. So what is going to happen, in my opinion, is the Times is going to wind up eating itself. Because again, this is the New York Times that pushed out journalists, any journalist that disagreed with them, anybody who was calling for unbiased journalism, for middle-of-the-road journalism. And the Times used to, at one point in time, be one of the most reputable newspapers on the planet. It's been a long time, but again, this is what happens when you're infiltrated with activists with a political agenda, and they're going to make sure that no other voices get heard, right? Because it hurts their feelings. So let's go out to the other side. We'll go to the Fox and we'll go to Mary Sue. So we got two polar opposites here. Fox, of course, after New York Times column defends J.K. Rowling, angry liberals denounce monster, insists that people are dying. So here are some of the tweets. J.K. Rowling is a monster. Trans people are under attack and being killed simply for existing. The New York Times should be ashamed for publishing this piece. She is a monster. Won't someone defend the anti-trans billionaire who lives in a castle, said no one ever. These are all blue checks. Are they paying for their blue checks? Are they paying Elon Musk? I thought he was the monster. I don't know. It's probably legacy. It doesn't matter anymore. The day after hundreds of current and former New York Times writers pleaded with the New York Times to stop their transphobic coverage, and days after a 16-year-old trans girl in the UK was murdered, that was awful. That should not have happened. But again, you know, connecting that to J.K. Rowling, I mean, come on. And they publish this bullshit. I don't care. They don't care. The cruelty is the point. People are dying. Leftist podcast host Molly Jong Fast took a jab at Rowling's wealth and mocked the New York Times columnist for defending a billionaire. Won't someone defend the anti-trans billionaire who lives in a castle? A collection of Hollywood celebrities and groups recently blasted the New York Times for its coverage of trans issues in a letter that made headlines on Wednesday. One of the targets of that letter was none other than Pamela Paul, the same columnist who wrote the op-ed defending Rowling. The letter signed by prominent celebrities like Judd Apatow and Lena Dunham. They're prominent. Where are the prominent celebrities? Lena Dunham? Does anybody care? She's a cisgender heterosexual, and therefore she should not have an opinion on women's issues. So that is Fox's takeaway. This is the Mary Sue, complete opposite, of course, 180. The New York Times knew what it was doing with its defense of J.K. Rowling. Oh, God. New York Times made it clear its priorities lie with headlines and profit rather than the values of a professional detachment free of any whiff of bias it claims to have. So the opinion article from Pamela Paul titled In Defense of J.K. Rowling was published in the morning of February 16th. It's almost as bad as another date in January. As the headline suggests, the article goes on to definitively state the characterization of Rowling as a transphobe doesn't square with her actual views. All that the author has attempted to do, according to Paul, is assert the rights of women. Here's a lengthy timeline according to the Mary Sue. Ultimately, it comes down to what hill you're prepared to die on. The New York Times, despite the pleas from present and former writers and Judd Apatow and Lena Dunham, has apparently come down in favor of inciting headlines, as every news outlet does, including the Mary Sue. Including the Mary Sue. Your headlines are clickbait because you're fighting to survive, Mary Sue, because I know your ad rates are not good, and I know that you've put that ad blocker on. In fact, my wife can't even get to your website anymore without turning the ad blocker off. You can't even see it behind. You can't opt out. You have to turn the ad blocker off to see anything, because you need the money. And you've only got like 5 writers now. What the hell? There's no doubt that this defense of Rowling was published knowing the polarizing reactions it would ignite, and it's definitely blazing. Yeah, it's a hot topic right now. They knew what they're doing. It's called the media. They know exactly what they're doing. How come when they do it, it's awful? If they had posted something that was a lightning rod that left-wingers would have agreed with wholeheartedly, and right-wingers would have taken it to task, they would have praised it. Absolutely. Been like, it's about time somebody said something. Reading through the article itself, there's nothing truly new or groundbreaking to unpack. It's largely a promotional piece for a podcast, yes, with Bari Weiss, I believe, who used to work for the New York Times, who was actually pushed out of the New York Times, as I understand it. I think I understand it. Bari Weiss, who actually is Jewish and gay, I believe, and I believe was dating Kate McKinnon from Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live, which ironically enough has made fun of a lot of left-wing causes in recent years, including the vaccine mandates and mask mandates. They had a scathing skit a year or two ago. And it was like you weren't even allowed to talk about, question anything. It was like, careful, careful. And Kate McKinnon was in that. I'm just saying, it's so weird how it's all coming together. Basically, outlets like the Mary Sue are losing influence. And people are like, you know what? Just give us the straight dope. Just tell us what is going on. Tell us what people's opinions are. And we will tell you. We, the public, we, the consumers, we, the customers, will tell you if we agree or don't agree. And again, you know, it's horrible about that person's death. Should not have happened. Tying that to J.K. Rowling, though, is stupid. And of course, they've got, you know, Rowling and her ilk. Her ilk. Where did this come from? Like, I can immediately tell what a person's politics are if they use the word ilk. Nobody uses the word ilk. Is this from, like, D&D 5e or something? Where the hell did this come from? Is this a Tumblr thing? Those Star Wars haters and their ilk. They don't like Rey Skywalker. They don't like Rey. Their ilk. And their ilk. Oh, funny thing. I gotta show you. Speaking of Rey Skywalker. This is what Rey Skywalker looks like according to AI. I just punched in, literally, punched in Rey Skywalker. This is what I got. Man, has she got a pair. I'm just saying, like, this is literally what I got just by punching in Rey Skywalker. I thought it was too funny. I had to share it. Anyway, let's go out to The Onion, of course, making fun of this situation. It's journalism's sacred duty to endanger the lives of as many trans people as possible. So this is making fun of the New York Times defense. They said, we firmly believe it's journalism's sacred duty to endanger the lives of as many trans people as possible. Talk about Quentin, a 14-year-old trans person, female at birth, who's now male. His transition was supported by one of his unmarried teachers, who is not a virgin. He stole his parents' car and drove to the hospital, where a doctor immediately began performing top surgery on him. Afterward, driving home drunk from the hospital, he became suicidally depressed. He wonders how, homeless and ridden with gonorrhea, if transitioning was a mistake. We just made Quentin up, and that's okay. It doesn't mean stories like his aren't potentially happening. Good journalism is about finding those stories even when they don't exist. It's about asking the tough questions and ignoring the answers you don't like, then offering misleading evidence in service of preordained editorial conclusions. That's interesting because it could go either way. In our case, endangering trans people is the lodestar that shapes our coverage. Frankly, if our work isn't putting trans people further at risk of trauma and violence, we consider it a failure. Oh my God. It's against free speech to stop us from fixating on genitals. This goes on and on and on. Anyway, and they have a bunch of people sign in here. Okay, so yeah, this is all about Hogwarts Legacy. I swear to God, that's what this is about. And the fact that she's getting a podcast and the fact that she's not canceled. She is not canceled. Everyone is furious that she's not canceled. She was supposed to be canceled. They don't understand what happened, what went wrong. You know, she's supposed to be homeless in a box. I don't understand it. And now not only is she not canceled, but there is a renewed interest in Harry Potter. There's a renewed interest in anything she does. And people are actually listening to her personal opinions now. Before it was just like you put the book out and leave your politics at the door. Nobody cares, right? So it backfired. I mean, big time. Like, the cancellation attempt backfired massively. And, you know, just doubling, tripling down on it is actually just going to drive more and more people to her side. So I'm just saying, I don't know where this ends. I have no idea where this ends, but I just know that she has picked up a lot of new fans, which I never would have seen 20 years ago, but there it is. I don't know what to tell you. Hogwarts is still selling. She's making boatloads of money off of Universal. I don't know what to tell you. You know, screaming about it, you know what's going to happen? The New York Times is going to fire a bunch of people. Oh no, they're going to have layoffs. And then they're going to get rid of, conveniently enough, they're going to get rid of everybody who complained and signed that letter, is what's going to happen. You know, I can almost guarantee it. I don't know. I'm going to wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.